Hi, and welcome to another edition of Newsmakers. It is Friday, May 6th. I'm Jerry Roberts, and I am joined by our all-star panel of top local journalists, Ryan P. Cruz of the Santa Barbara Independent, Nick Welsh of the Santa Barbara Independent, Josh Molina of Newshawk, and June Starkey of the Santa Barbara Independent. Thank you all for being here. Of course, the biggest story everywhere around the globe this week was the leak of the draft decision by Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito, kind of dismissing 50 years of jurisprudence along with Roe v. Wade. And we could have a whole telethon on that, but we'll come back to that at the end, go around on it. On COVID, cases increasing here and around the state about 20%, but hospitalizations remain low. And if that's largely, I think, because of the 70% vaccination rate we have in the county. So if you haven't had your vaccination, please go get it. Nick, the Indy's endorsements for the June 7th primary are out with less than 5 weeks before the election. On probably only 2 weeks before the ballots go out. Not a lot of surprises there. You endorsed Salud, you endorsed Greg Hart, and I think the biggest profile in Courage, endorsing Laura Capps, who has no opposition. So good on
That was
you.
a tough one. We really struggled on that one.
But the one I was interested in, and the one that really seemed to be I don't want to say the most thoughtful, but they, the most in-depth and caring about that race was the County Superintendent of Schools, which is usually just who cares, but why does it matter this time?
It's it sort of takes your breath away trying to even talk about it. I've been doing this for over 35 years. I've been to Toledo West Sanitary District meetings. I've been to vector control meetings, but I have never once been to a county education meeting. It is the most obscure, but it's 550 employees, a budget of 105 people, and they keep the lights on for 20 school districts and 70,000 students around. And they don't just keep the lights on, but they provide a host of administrative functions that are indispensable, not sexy, but indispensable. And they provide a host of direct services for people who are, for migrant education, for homeless education, for, up at juvenile hall, they provide direct education. And for people, special education, they're they're the ones who makes the trains run. So it is a huge operation with profound implications for the family served. And in it, we have kind of a career technocrat who talks fast and is very passionate in Susan Salcido. And you have an ideologue, phys ed teacher who has taught at 6 different schools in 18 years. And Christy Lozano. And Christy Lozano is quite, adamant and passionate in her beliefs, but the depth of administrative experience is a bit lacking.
Zero. It's zero.
Sort of zero, and it's kind of like saying you have a license to drive a motor scooter, but now we're going to let you drive an airplane. And we're going to let you drive an airplane with 200 people on board. That one just don't fly. So I would say that was sort of it in a nutshell. But then, of course, there is a huge ideological component. It's like the elephant under the carpet here that, Christy Lozano was part of a group of loosely affiliated or tightly affiliated. It's hard to know. Sort of cultural conservatives who are very aggrieved by the so-called woke agenda and the indoctrination of children into, equity, diversity curriculum.
Right. All right. Hey, June, and you interviewed Christy, did you not, for a story?
We didn't talk in person. I sent her email questions.
Okay, and she was not happy with your questions, or she was not happy with your story, something, she was unhappy.
She's not happy with pretty much anything I say about her. I imagine she'll text me sometime after this is up.
And Josh, we have the feeling that the invisible hand of the James Fankner, the noted conservative provocateur, is behind Christy Lozano's campaign, as well as the others that Nick just referenced.
Yeah, and I want to take note to your Facebook page, Jerry, because there's quite the provocative exchange talking about your interview with Miss Solon. What's her name? Miss Lozano. And yeah, so James Fankner is, it would appear, some sort of a consultant to Christy Lozano and some of the other conservative candidates on the ballot. And it's just sort of interesting if you just throw away the whole ideology of what's happening here, and you just look at the qualifications. I think it's a pretty clear issue as to who should get elected to that seat. And also, it also points to conservatives not being able to really have a plan, a strategy. You don't just pluck people out and say run if you want a long-term strategy for success. And yes, I know they're outpointed from a registration point of view, but you have to start building.
Well, this is a nonpartisan race, is it not?
Well, it is nonpartisan, but it's very partisan.
Yeah.
Because even though Christy Lozano said on your show, Jerry, that she's not a Republican and she's not a Democrat, I mean, she's conservative. And if you want to have influence, if conservatives want to have influence, you've got to find a good candidate who's qualified and then build upon that and try to make them appeal to the moderates. This is Santa Barbara County. This isn't another part of the country where you could have that kind of a candidate be successful. But the bottom line is, if you care about qualifications, I think the choice is probably pretty clear.
Yeah.
One of the things to follow up a little bit on what Josh was saying, I mean, once upon a time, you had conservative Republicans or moderate Republicans like Brooks Firestone, or running for office. He ran for state assembly and won. He was on the county board of supervisors and won. Didn't always agree with him, but he was sort of he was a pro-choice bike pass Republican. That was sort of how people would put it. It was bike pass Republican. And Dan Secord at the city council, Santa Barbara City Council, or they existed, but they are in short supply now. The Republican Party, I think, and the Republican Party is sort of an irrelevant name at this point. I think if you're a cultural conservative, you're sort of scrounging. And I mean, it was.
Do you think she'll have any support up north?
I think that she will probably get some support up north. She'll probably get more support up north than she will down here, because I think there's a more conservative voter base, and people up north are less enamored of government as a solution for problems and more prone to think of it as the cause. But in your interview, you highlighted that she refers to the LGBTQ sort of teaching aids that were provided to teachers so that they could teach to certain holidays and things like this as grooming. And grooming is a term of art that refers to what pedophiles do to get close to their victims. And the fact that pedophilia has become a sort of a casual charge that's thrown around without any regard to the accuracy of it by conservatives with whom they disagree is kind of a we take it a little bit in stride right now because we're just sort of
we're numb,
worn down.
Yeah,
but I think it's one of those charges that should always startle and always shock. And I think I personally was offended by the use of that because it really does belittle the trauma and pain that people who are
Yeah.
sexually abused go through.
All right, thanks for that. All right, I want to talk to June about another education issue, but first on the election. So Ryan, you are, I understand, moderating the sheriff's debate.
Yeah, so we're gonna have a forum with the League of Women Voters of Santa Barbara on Tuesday. It's gonna be at 6 o'clock. Yeah, so we're gonna have Bill Brown and Juan Camarena both ask them a couple questions, and hopefully people can be a little bit more informed after that and make their decision off that.
What do you, quickly, what do you see as the key difference between the two of them?
Well, the key difference is Bill Brown's been around a while, and he has a lot of political power behind him and a lot of money behind him. And that's going to be a lot to overcome for Juan Camarena. A reform or a new candidate is always a little attractive to people, but it just, we'll see if people go out and vote for him, and if he came out too late, because this one will most likely be decided on just the June 7th primary. So
Yeah.
since it's just the two of them, it's coming up really fast. People kind of, I don't know if people are ready to vote in June. People usually wait until November to make their decisions. So that might be a factor in this too.
Yeah, and that's also, I think, the case in the county supervisor.
Yeah.
I think the problem that, I mean, you've reported on him, I haven't, but what I read from your article and, seen in a couple of events, he hasn't really articulated in a big way as to what he's going to do that's different. You get some ideas that he's going to be more accessible, he's going to go up more outreach to the community. He'll be better for morale for the rank and file, but it's a very hard road to go to, topple somebody.
That's
who's
right.
been
No,
there.
you gotta, I mean, you gotta, the first thing the challenger has to do is make the case against the incumbent. And you're right, I haven't heard that case made in a strong way. Hey, June, let me ask you about the Santa Barbara Unified School District. We were just talking about education, and you had a story about some new curriculum enterprising program for English learners. And it's one of those things that, you could, it's a cure, sounds like a cure for insomnia, because anytime I think you drill down into education policy, it is complicated, but this really seems like a serious move to address the so-called learning gap. Can you talk a little bit about those curriculum?
Yeah, so these curriculum are meant to address the education gap within emergent multilingual learners. And obviously in the Santa Barbara School District, that majority is going to be Spanish-speaking students who grew up speaking Spanish and are maybe trying to learn English at the same time as they're going through their studies. So these curriculum are meant to address sort of that disparity where these students are expected to learn English and learn everything else at the same pace as everyone else. And that can be really difficult, especially when maybe they're not being read to at home. They speak a different language at home and they're very young, and it's hard for them to make those connections. So the ones that I covered in my story are the newest ones that are being reviewed, and they are basically targeting the language and linguistics aspect of the gap, sort of using bilingual programs to help make these connections where students might be lacking as far as their reading, English, language understanding.
Yeah, well, I commend you for tackling that issue because it really is complicated. And of course, Josh, he didn't even try. But speaking of Josh, so this Hot Springs parking story that we talked about last time too, it continues to percolate, near simmering. Will it boil over? You see what I did there with that metaphor? There was a court hearing today.
Are you one of the people bathing in the hot springs, Jerry?
No, man, I'm not even on TikTok, but go ahead. So what happened? The whole issue was before Judge Geck today, was it not?
Yeah, so the issue is Hot Springs Trail has always been popular. It ballooned into something that was very popular for people from LA, Ventura County, during the pandemic, some viral social media posts. And so it became a very popular destination. So people were going, there's no place to park. There's something like 8 spaces that are legal. And if you're going to go hike there, you just find a place to park on the narrow streets of Montecito. And this has upset many of the homeowners in Montecito who say, hey, you're making the roads unsafe because you're parking along the street. Many of them were parking on Riven Rock Road a little more than a year ago. CHP went and striped that, got rid of that. Now people are parking on East Mountain and other places, and they want to go hiking and they want to spend time overnight. They want to go camping. And so the homeowners are very upset at this. At the same time, the county, Doss Williams, they send this letter to some homeowners saying, hey, we need you to move this stuff from the public right of way because we have a plan to install public parking spaces in the public right of way. And the homeowners, that sets off an alarm. Some other homeowners then file a lawsuit, or not a lawsuit, but they file a petition to seek an injunction to stop the county from moving forward. And it becomes this heated political thing. Montecito homeowners versus the county. Access to the trails for locals versus tourists who are coming into town. As we know, Doss will. What's that?
TikTokers.
Yeah. And as we know, Doss Williams is not the most popular person in Montecito for a variety of reasons, Carpinteria. So he's got Montecito homeowners upset at him again, because there's this perception that, oh, you're trying to infringe upon us by making us move our stuff. And the county's saying, hey, this is public right of way. You shouldn't have your stuff there. So I called it pandemonium in my newsletter, Jerry. I thought you would have appreciated that. It's gone from paradise to pandemonium, and you really just can't get that anywhere else in this town, even from the great Nick Welsh. So,
well, no, your use of alliteration is widely known to be over the line.
So it all went to a head at the court.
But
today.
anyway, so the judge issued this injunction, correct?
Yeah. So the judge said we agree with the homeowners and the county. You should not proceed at this time with this parking plan, and you need to do environmental review. There's all sort of dispute about the numbers. 62 spaces is what was filed in the legal papers. It's what Scott McGulpin, the public works director, said in a conversation in a driveway of a homeowner, as saying we could do this, but we're not. When you say you could do something as an implied threat, you're going to hear that as a real number. And that's what these homeowners did. And so that made it to court. The county's like, oh, we were never going to do 62. We want to do 10, 12, 4 now, 6 later, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of a big mess.
And Doss came back at you on your story, did he not, to complain about the 62, which I am told is actually in a public works document, but
yeah, it's in the court filing, and it's also Scott McGulpin says in his declaration that it's a number he used as the maximum number of spaces they could do, but that he would instead take a light touch and do less than that. But you know, if I tell you, Jerry, I'm going to do this to you, but I'm not, the threat of what I could do to you is what you're going to remember. And that's what made its way to the court. Doss was upset because he's taking pressure. He's getting pressure from people saying, wait a minute, you're supposed to be on our side. We're the homeowners. Why are you trying to make more spaces for hikers? And Doss is saying, hey, recreation is for everybody. And hey, we can't just not enforce the law with the hikers. There's stuff in the public right of way. So we all need to play along. So he's trying to broker this deal. Right now, the homeowners are up one.
More mush from the first district representative. What'd you say, Nick?
Aren't they trying to privatize the public land? Isn't that what the issue?
Well, I don't know, Nick. I mean, until we have a comprehensive environmental review, I don't think.
Well, exactly. I mean, you know, you got to have a comprehensive review to build a doghouse, and these guys are.
What I heard is that the county screwed up because the county said we had filed for an exemption for environmental review when we did this, and Judge Geck said, "Show me where you filed that," and they had no record of having done that. So. They kind of took their finger off the checker piece and got caught.
Yeah, okay, all right. Well, so a victory for the homeowners, a
For
victory
Barry
for the,
Capello.
for the Capello law firm. And
Jerry, you can just park in, the homeowner's driveway. They'll let you in and you can just hike up the trail. I know you rub shoulders with that crowd. so.
and a humiliating defeat for the first district supervisor. All right, Ryan, so the city council and the city planning commission met together in an unusual convening to talk about, I guess, really just sort of spitball ideas about housing and how finance.
Housing elements, yeah.
Yeah,
So we get an allocation every 8 years for a unit goal we're supposed to meet. So last time we had 4,000. We have not reached those 4,000
from
yet.
the state, from the
From the state. So this time around, from 2023 to 2031, I believe it's going to be 8,001 units. So it's going to be tough for us to meet that number, because with the 4,000, if you look at kind of what has been done so far, 95.8, I think it was, we've met 95.8% of our allocation for above moderate. So we're building for above moderate. We're meeting everything we need to. But for the
also
other
known
ones,
as market rate.
for low and affordable, we're really behind, and we're at 14%, I think, and 0.4% for the other one. And so we're gonna have to figure out something, because right now our hotel prices are at an all-time high. We're getting a lot of visitors and all these high-end kind of housing units, but this affordable housing, we're going to have to figure this out. And that's going to be, so the goals, they didn't really come to a consensus. There's a few city council members that were missing. So it's going to be continued on May 17th, which should be a really interesting conversation. There's a lot of people from the housing authority, they think that we can use the transient occupancy tax, which, we have a lot of surplus. We had a lot from that last year. And maybe we could use a portion of that to help kind of either subsidize this affordable housing, and like you saw, we passed an ordinance to make pre-existing violations so you can go ahead and get your permit, kind of streamline the process. So I think we're going to see more of that, making the process easier. We're gonna see if we're going to see more about making things more affordable, which is kind of
The 8,000 figure is absurd on its face, is it not?
Yeah.
Josh?
I don't know how or where we're going to meet that, but the housing element goals, and we're going to have to turn the first draft in August, and then February is going to be the final draft. And in that report, it's going to have how we're going to get it done and where this is going to be done, and all those details. So that's going to have to be worked out in the next few months.
Well, they do this, every so often, and they're never going to, be able to reach the goals the state. I want to say one thing. Ryan did a great job summarizing that meeting. One of the things that's going to come out of that, in addition to the debate over whether to use hotel bed tax, which is general fund money to pay for housing, is this tax that was thrown out, a vacancy tax on homeowners with second homes. So once people start understanding what that's about and they go into more detail, that's going to be a really controversial issue. The idea that, these people who buy homes in Santa Barbara just to have them to come for the film festival or for certain times of the year, that they may be charged or taxed in order to deal with the affordable housing situation. I think that's a new conversation that will be controversial.
What do you mean it was thrown out?
Well, it's one of the recommendations by Rob
Oh, I see.
Fredrickson from the.
Yeah, it was floated. A couple people were talking about it, and yeah.
I thought
They said you should look into
that.
it, and the council and planning commission are like, yeah, we should.
Cities like Vancouver
Yeah, it's been done.
have passed those, and what they do is they use that tax as a basis for floating bonds and using the bond proceeds to subsidize truly affordable housing.
Yeah, so is there, and a couple of you wrote about the council's latest moves to combat sea level rise because of climate change. And of course, we're in the middle of 1,000-year drought. Are those issues raised in the discussion of,
The sea level. So there was a couple questions floated about, the range of that. Mostly if the new police station would be in that range, it's not within the 100 or 200 year. And of course that map the sea level isn't going to come up to Castillo. That means it could be because of tidal inundation, and after storms, it could flood up to there. So in the next 30 years, they're going to be trying to kind of do the smaller things, which is kind of more ecological, like moving the sand and getting sand and berms and dunes in there to redirect where the areas would go. And then after that would be any bigger things like moving Cabrillo up. That would be way down the line. We're talking like 80 years down the line.
yeah, all right. I just, there's an internal contradiction. June, I know you agree with me that the end of civilization is near. And I think Exhibit A for that is this knucklehead who crashed his plane so he could have a video on YouTube. And we talked about this a while back. I think you broke that story, and now the FAA has looked into it. And what happened?
Well, they concluded that it was a stunt. It was a YouTube stunt. He did crash it into the mountains for YouTube, and they were also able to prove that he removed the wreckage after the fact. As far as the legality of everything, like they don't really, the FAA doesn't really enforce or punish people exactly. They can only revoke his license.
Which
So
they did, right?
They did. They revoked it. And every day that he didn't turn over his license, he had to pay like $1,600.
But here's the thing I wonder about that. I mean, he's a good camper. He goes and he cleans up the mess he made. He puts Santa Barbara on the map. He gives us a little bit more of an adventurous reputation than we might otherwise deserve. And he's enterprising. And everybody watched it and said, "Are you crazy? Look at you." I don't know. I think he deserves an award.
No, for the record, no, he does not. I'm going. The soaring community, good for you guys. I don't want a plane guy coming in over here and making us famous for crashing a plane.
He did put us on the map, though. I've gotten many calls saying, where did Trevor Jacob take off from? I really need to see where his plane took off from.
Yeah, that's why the hotel taxes are so up.
Yeah.
Hey, Nick, so the cover of the paper this week is about, I guess, things that we could actually do or things that are actually being done in the name of climate change. What can you talk just a little bit about that?
So,
Thank you very much. Josh?
Don't talk to me about
What
climate
do you mean?
change.
You had one of the stories. What was
I never know. I mean, one of the things that, one of the things that we are doing about climate change is we're trying to put solar pretty much everywhere. The other thing that's really quite interesting about climate change that we're looking into is right now off the coast of Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo County, an area about the size of 373 square miles is being contemplated for wind energy. And there's a whole lot of more questions than answers about it, but that is said to be the Saudi Arabia of wind power. And they have these turbines, these floating turbines that they're talking about. Each one is as tall as the Statue of Liberty, and the blade is the size of 2 football fields. And if, according to some of the initial projections, they're talking about this would be able to produce more energy even than the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant, which is the single largest.
Which is back on the maybe list, right? The governor has said.
The governor is trying to put on the maybe list. So I don't know how many years down the road this wind energy, I'm sorry, I said solar, but I meant wind energy off the coast. If that was to get going, it's not like a marginal sort of pat you on the head contribution to the energy reservoir. It's a massive amount of energy that they're talking about. Of course, there's all sorts of questions, bird strikes, what's going to happen to the fishing industry down below. There was a big meeting 2 weeks ago down at the harbor. The fishing industry was meeting with these guys to talk about we must be compensated. So already they're talking about compensation. I think we got like 22 companies who are chomping at the bit to get involved here. So that's a really big, it's not like, shoot, it can't be, talked down to the way, oil
Although
supporters.
I read a story somewhere. I can't remember, maybe the Sacramento Bee. There was a moment this week when something like 96% of the energy being generated in California was from alternative sources. Yes.
We're getting there.
Yeah. So that surprised me. I didn't think we were close to that. All right. Josh, you had, who'd you have on the podcast? Gabe? Josh?
Oh, sorry, you froze there. What's that?
Who's on your podcast? Gabe was on the podcast?
Oh, yeah, I had Gabe Escobedo on my show, Community Formation Commission Chair, Planning Commission Chair, Democratic Party Central Committee, some title he has there. So we talked about his experience, the recommendations of the Community Formation Commission. Upcoming though, I have Caroline Hanna from SB Plan, and we'll be talking about schools issues and some of the initiatives she's working on and some of the things that the school district's doing. So
Josh,
what's to come.
last I saw Gabe Escobedo and Police Chief Bonnie Maleknian were supposed to go into a smoke-filled room and figure things out in terms of coming to a compromise about what they can live with. And I'm wondering, when you talked to Gabe, did you get any sense of what that compromise might look like for a police review commission?
No, we didn't talk about what was ahead. We sort of talked about the recommendations and how we got there. And we kind of went over the story you talked about, which was Lieutenant Hill and how that moment was really powerful for Gabe. I mean, the focus of the thing for the Community Formation Commission was how everybody gets along, how calm this sort of conversation is. And I think Gabe's a large reason for that and his approach. So going forward, obviously the council needs to make the final call. So I don't know about what they're going to hash out between the two of them, but I think everybody's really close to being on the same page.
Yeah. Hey, June, the city council meets next week again. The school board meets next week again. I believe. Anyway, any fireworks to look for there? What's? I mean, there's public comment is usually fireworks in and of itself, but.
Yeah, ever since they've gone back to in-person, public comment has kind of stolen the show, but agenda's not out. So as far as I know, that's going to be the only fire starter.
Well, just one thing on that, the group that's looking to pull iPads from elementary school students, they have some time on the agenda. The agenda's not out yet, but the school board had said they're going to put them on this agenda. And so there'll be a talk about whether kids are getting too much screen time and whether YouTube access should be removed from their devices. So that group is doing things, I don't want to say the right way, but rather than like blasting the district, they're working within the district to get time. And
is that
probably get a positive
plan, or is
result.
that a different?
No, I mean, there may be some overlap, but these are pediatricians and counselors.
I heard a lot of what they were saying. It was really hard for me to tell how realistic their goals were, because that's, that's a huge tool for a lot of teachers, and it connects people in a lot of ways. A lot of kids use those programs on the iPad to connect to different programs, there's like a whole reporting program. I mean, how realistic do you think their goals are?
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be a conversation because there's some equity issues. Like, do we really want the only people to have iPads to be the ones who can afford them at home? Because they're talking about not letting them take them home because there's no monitoring of what kids or parents are doing or looking at. So I think they want training. They want some controls, but I don't know. I mean, I think from an equity issue and equity perspective, technology is good. They have some health concerns though. They're talking about kids, childhood obesity, screen time, other things than just the curriculum, that kids are just spending all their time on this instead of, interacting with each other and learning how to talk or exercising or whatever.
The young girls in particular are, their sort of self-image definitely, taking a beating in a lot of those
But that
social
has a lot
media.
more to do with the parents and their screen time at home than at school, I would think.
Except for the little kids, right? I mean, so K through 2 or K through 3. I mean,
Yeah.
they only adapted to them because of the pandemic, right? Because
Right.
we had Zoom school, and now it's just kind of, I don't know. I've only got 8 grandchildren. I can tell you, it's a problem. It
But
really-
just to throw in, to follow up, like Josh was saying, this is the right way to go. In terms of open mic, Christy Lozano, at one meeting, I think she spoke 2 times on open mic, and because you only get 1 to a customer, she spoke under another name on the second one. And so maybe she'll come out again.
All right. Ryan, again, when's the sheriff's debate?
That'll be on Tuesday, May 10th at 6 o'clock.
Okay, and is there a link that's on the?
Yeah, it'll be on League of Women Voters. It'll be on Independence Facebook. It'll be TVSD. We'll be broadcasting on. So
All right, you're gonna
Is
wear
the
your,
Indy endorsed on that race yet? Or are you waiting for the forum?
I don't
We're
even know.
waiting.
Yeah, I think we're waiting. I don't know. We
It's all on you,
Tackled that one.
Ryan. You can sway the whole thing with your question.
and then the league is also having a Salcido Christie Lozano debate, I think the following week. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about that. All right, anybody want to weigh in on the Alito decision, the implications of that? I mean, it's just so depressing to me.
Yeah, it's depressing. I'm glad that we live in California. It's unfortunate for people that, don't get to decide where they grow up. And, I think, it's good that California is kind of speaking up against it, but it's definitely a tough thing going on.
One of the LA Times political writers had a really interesting piece today about, how, sort of the deep red states are already, going to outlaw it. Some legislative committee in Louisiana decided to call it homicide yesterday. And obviously the West Coast and sort of the Northeast states, the blue states, have much more liberal.
Well, I think we're seeing we had a lot of the my body, my choice during the vaccine times, and not the same real response here.
No.
I just want to say, Jerry, that the journalism here was really great. That Politico somehow got this scoop, worked it. I don't know. They haven't said exactly how they get it, but I think we should think about the journalism here and how profound and impactful it is that they're doing their job, being watchdogs, somehow got this, leaked it, published it, wrote about it, and now it's the topic of conversation. And I think it's just a good reminder to all of us in this room that, yeah, we always got to be working to get that information, be watchdogs, and push for that information. Because, I mean, I don't know if it's going to change. It's probably not going to change the ruling. They're saying it's probably not, but you never know with all this public pushback. And that'll be all because of the journalism, and two journalists who pushed for it had the guts to publish it. And
Yeah.
to me, that's notable.
Hey,
But
man.
I kind of wonder if, did they push for it, or did it get leaked to them and then they had the guts to run with it? I mean, the theory that I've heard that sort of resonates is that John Roberts, the Supreme Court Chief Justice, was apparently trying to come up with an alternate ruling that would let the Mississippi restrictions go, even though it's too far, but would keep Roe v. Wade intact as precedent. And he was working on that end. And so the leak, according to one theory, it was released so that everybody was on record as to where they already stood. It would make it harder for them to change their position and undermine Roberts' ability to craft a compromise measure.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense to me. I think, although, it does
You
give.
guys don't know, by the way, when we're talking about funding and donating funds, it's always a lot more impactful to donate directly to abortion funds, because Planned Parenthood does take a lot of funding and donations from people, but they don't actually put it towards a lot of direct health care. So if anyone out there besides you foremen are listening, when we talk about donating to people and helping them out in these kind of situations, it's better to donate directly to the people and not to Planned Parenthood is amazing, but donating directly to Planned Parenthood is sometimes like throwing your money in a black hole. So,
or into high salaries for executives.
yeah. So directly to the people.
But they did have a nice, they did put together a nice rally protest the other day.
They
I
always
was struck by how many young women were out. I know a lot of people were wondering, if you grew up expecting this as a right, to what extent would you be outraged?
Yeah, and I think that shows that anytime you see any sort of protest now, you're seeing a lot of young people,
Yeah,
college, high school, they're really engaged, and I really like to see that, and I hope they continue to be engaged and learn.
And
that
vote,
was what was really striking about that crowd.
and vote in the midterms.
Vote,
Yeah,
vote,
no, I
vote.
mean, it's because, I mean, the draft decision was so sweeping that a lot of people have.
I'm fine. I'm heading out. See you
All
later.
right, thanks, Josh. That it can affect gay marriage, the gay marriage ruling, and all kinds of other things that we sort of take for granted. All right, on that gloomy note, we'll close it out. Thanks to Josh Molina, who's already gone, Ryan P. Cruz, June Starkey, and Nick Welsh. We will see you next time on Newsmaker.